You got it, you got it. It's a cooler. I'm all in.
All right, well,
1.5.
we don't know what he has as of yet. He will be getting called.
Bonne chance, monsieur. I'm all in. I'm all in.
The World Series of Poker 2025 was supposed to be the ultimate showcase of skill and strategy. Instead, it turned into one of the most chaotic, frustrating, and flat-out embarrassing summers in poker history. 6-minute tanks with 1 chip left, a player banned mid-series, rules rewritten on the fly, and a fanbase more interested in debating the circus than celebrating its champions. Let's break down exactly how the World Series 2025 fell apart. The 2025 World Series of Poker main event was supposed to be a spectacle of skill. Instead, it became a test of patience for players, dealers, and anyone watching at home. At the center of it were 3 names that would dominate headlines for all the wrong reasons: Martin Cabral, Will Kassouf, and Ike Haxton. Cabral already had a reputation for grinding the pace of play to a halt, mixing long tanks with endless table chatter. But 2025 saw him take it further, especially at final tables. His routine of staring down opponents, cracking jokes, and triple-checking his cards for minutes on end became so disruptive that tournament staff slapped him with a permanent 10-second shot clock for every single decision. Even then, he managed multiple deep runs and walked away with his 4th World Series bracelet, proof that his antics weren't costing him results. Kassouf, returning to the main event stage with his trademark verbal sparring and psychological needling, proved just as polarizing. Over the course of day 6 alone, the clock was called on him more than 20 times. Every pause, every smirk, every speech play was another drain on the momentum of the game. Eventually, it boiled over. After repeated infractions and escalating tensions with players and staff, Kassouf was banned from the remainder of the World Series the moment he busted from the main event, escorted out by security in a scene more fitting for a nightclub ejection than poker's biggest stage. And then there was Haxton. Normally respected as one of the sharpest high-stakes minds in the game, he shocked the poker world by tanking for a full 6 minutes, with only 1 chip left. Facing an all-in and with folding never being a real option, the only thing Haxton was waiting for was another player to bust at a different table so he could ladder up to a bigger payout. He even told the table they could call the clock whenever they felt like it, but nobody did. One opponent even managed to eat an entire dinner before Haxton finally made his move. It was gamesmanship to the letter of the rules, but to many, it was an angle shoot that turned the world's premier poker event into a farce. The problem wasn't just the players, it was the system. The World Series' timing rules put the burden on the players themselves to call for a clock. When someone finally did, the dealer had to consult the floor to decide if reasonable time had passed. Only then would the 30-second countdown begin. For repeat offenders, that countdown could be shortened, but the delays were already baked in. And with so many players hesitant to confront high-profile opponents, chronic stallers had free reign. The result? Hours of broadcast coverage filled with dead air and awkward glances as the clock ticked, chips gathered dust, and the so-called Cadillac of poker started looking more like rush hour traffic. The outrage didn't take long to spill beyond the tables. Fans on social media called it painful to watch. Commentators called it a black mark on poker. And the loudest voice of all came from Daniel Negreanu. Negreanu didn't mince words. In his daily vlogs and posts,
I find this incident to be embarrassing. I would be embarrassed if I was a high-stakes pro. Everyone at the table essentially colludes together.
He tore into the stalling epidemic, framing it not as a clever tactic, but as outright theft from the rest of the field. 6 minutes in the tank with 1 chip left? In his view, that wasn't strategy. It was stealing money from players who weren't abusing the clock. Negreanu wasn't just venting, he had a fix in mind, a chess clock system. Here's how it would work. Every player gets a 5-second delay before their personal clock starts ticking, so routine folds and standard bets don't drain their time bank. If they act quickly, they earn extra seconds, a small reward for keeping the game moving. Over the course of a tournament, those bonus seconds could be saved for genuinely tough spots. Negreanu argued it would protect deep thinking where it mattered, without letting chronic stallers drag out every single hand. Plenty of pros backed him. David Baker called the 6-minute stall literal theft from honest players. Recreational players chimed in too, saying they'd rather lose on a bad beat than sit through dead time and deliberate stalling. But not everyone saw it as a problem. Players like Johnny Moreno defended Haxton's move, pointing out that he was playing within the current rules. In their eyes, the job of a poker pro is to maximize EV, expected value, by any legal means. If that meant waiting for another player to bust and locking in a bigger payout, so be it. Then there were the purists. To them, unlimited thinking time was part of poker's DNA. Forcing decisions on an artificial countdown risked turning the game into a speed run, where nuanced spots got rushed and mistakes multiplied. As one veteran put it, in tournament poker, some decisions deserve all the time they need. If you can't stand waiting, maybe high-stakes poker isn't for you. The debate became a split-screen battle, one side calling for urgent reform, the other warning against over-officiating the game. And while the arguments raged online, the World Series' next move was already in motion, a rulebook overhaul aimed at cleaning up the mess. When the dust from the main event settled, the World Series didn't just walk away from the criticism, it came back swinging with one of the biggest rule shakeups in recent memory. The official line was that the changes were about fairness, efficiency, and professionalism. But to many, they looked like a reactionary patch job on a year that had already gone off the rails. The 2025 rulebook introduced 6 major changes. 1. No-show policy. If you weren't in your seat by the first level after the first break, you were out, with your buy-in refunded and your chips removed from play. Organizers said it was about stopping pros from registering late just to dodge early variance. Critics argued it punished amateurs who might be running late due to travel or scheduling issues. 2. Expanded conduct bans. Players could now be barred before, during, or after an event, with lifetime seize as property bans applying automatically to World Series events. Supporters saw this as a necessary tool to deal with serial troublemakers like Kasuf. Others feared it gave too much subjective power to the organizers. 3. Tech ban at final 3 tables. No phones, tablets or laptops once you hit the last 3 tables. This came after the Jonathan Tamayo controversy the year before, where his Rails laptop use raised questions about real-time assistance. Many called the ban overdue. A few pros dismissed it as optics over substance, saying it wouldn't stop discreet cheating. 4th, button redraws at 3, 2, 1 tables. Players would now redraw for the dealer button as the field narrowed. This one got near universal approval, removing the risk of anyone coasting into a key spot with an unintended positional advantage. 5. Dodging blinds penalty. Anyone caught skipping their blinds during a table change would forfeit both blinds and antes, plus serve a 1-round penalty, praised as a fair fix for an old loophole. 6. No strategy talk except on breaks. While the clock was running, players couldn't get outside strategic advice, not even between hands. It was meant to stop subtle collusion. The backlash came quickly, with players pointing out how vague it was. As one pro joked, "Now I need a lawyer to tell me if I'm talking about dinner or the last hand I played." The reaction was split right down the middle. On poker forums, some praised the World Series for finally tackling blind dodging, late registration abuse, and the grey areas around tech at the table. Others saw it as overreach. One comment summed up the mood among skeptics. These rules feel like patchwork. They're fixing leaks in the boat, but ignoring the hole in the bottom. For supporters, the crackdown was a sign that the World Series was serious about cleaning up the game. For critics, it was too little, too late. A handful of band-aids slapped onto a gaping wound that 2025 had ripped wide open. By the time the series wrapped, the 2025 World Series wasn't remembered for its champions, its final hands, or its iconic moments. It was remembered for delays so long players could finish a meal mid-hand, for a high-profile ban in the middle of the main event, and for a rulebook rewrite that managed to unite and divide the poker world at the same time. And if poker's most prestigious event can't strike the balance between fairness and player freedom, the disaster of 2025 might just become the new normal. But this wasn't the only time the poker world's dirty laundry got aired in public. In another story, Mike Matusow pulled back the curtain on what really went on behind the scenes of high-stakes poker, and his claims might change how you see the show forever. Click here to see exactly what he revealed.